And I know you're an offensive hacker, but what can we do? How can we prepare our organizations? How can we prepare our people for this level of tradecraft?
Well, companies have to keep their ear close to the ground, and as bad guys develop better tradecraft, they have to educate their employees and actually show the types of attacks they use. So it's more on the security awareness training side that hovering over a link today is not good enough. While in less sophisticated attacks, it probably will reveal a domain that seems suspicious. But if we're dealing with more advanced threat actors, it's going to be difficult. And how we're able to actually do this is we signed up for 2 free Okta accounts, free day trials, and we're able to do a configuration to have one refer to the other. So we're able to get the domain that it's going to okta.com. And the reason that we had to log into the email in the first place is we have to be in our email to get the phish. So this is the type of tradecraft bad guys are using today. We used a tool called Evil Jinx, and that's how we're able to get around the 2FA.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I mean, it also gets us right back to the cell phones, the text messages for 2-factor authentication. I mean, we don't have time to cover that, but one thing I do kind of want to cover with you is that in the last 10 years we've seen quite a transformation in enterprises, right? Like we've seen the move to the cloud. We've seen dependencies upon dependencies. Software packages get stacked on top of each other to build more complicated solutions, right? The last year we've seen a crazy move to work from anywhere, right? People are using partially managed devices, right? What has changed in the last 10 years, sort of as the network border disappeared, and if you have sort of insights on how it has changed in the last year, hacker tradecraft. Has it evolved, or is it just same tricks?
Well, as we know, complexity is the enemy, right? The more complex a system, the more likely there are going to be vulnerabilities that developers have, made mistakes that people are going to take advantage of. But I can think about 10 years ago, we still had pretext calls as a way. We still had phishing. Yeah. I would say malware was less sophisticated. If you remember Poison Ivy back in the day. So back 10 years ago, Poison Ivy. Today, Cobalt Strike, and using different types of payloads. 10 years ago, our payloads would be dropping something onto disk. So we'd have persistent access. Now we don't do that anymore. We basically go with memory-only attacks. So 10 years ago, disk, today, memory only. And living off the land, what that means is we're not going to upload our own tooling to the compromised system. We'll live off the land, like, for example, using MS Build or certutil to execute code. So we're uploading like a text file, and then we're able to install our payloads that way. And then, of course, just as you just mentioned, Vincent, it's old school, on-prem, colo versus now cloud, AWS, Azure, Google. So we're finding more of our clients are in the cloud. But as you've seen in the last year, supply chain attacks. Now, supply chain attacks, why people might think those are relatively new, they're really not. Back in the 1980s, when I was on the other side, I hacked into this company called Digital Equipment Corporation, and I had the ability to change the operating system. I could for distribution. Did I do it? Absolutely not, because I was afraid I'd make a mistake and harm the company and harm the users, and that wasn't what I was about. Leveraging CSRF vulnerabilities. We see, or even a major bank got hacked because of a CSRF vulnerability in their AWS firewall, in their WAF, right? And also, the ability for bad guys to crack password hashes between, in the last year, back then we're talking John the Ripper, now we're talking Hashcat, and I personally have a system of 24 GPUs. So the amount of password tries that we get per second is in the billions.
Yeah, and so I think you highlighted to me two really sort of key points, right? If we think about sort of how cyber defense evolved, right? Like when I started, we did PCAPs, right? That's where life was at, right? And we could read everything. You could read people's passwords, right? And traffic became encrypted. If I think about sort of now where cyber hunting stands, right? Like it's a race to get the memory image. We're not even dumping disk anymore. It's a race to get a memory image. Then, try to break it apart with volatility, try to get in there and try to understand what's actually running, because the system isn't telling you anymore what you need to know, right? And so that evolution has has continued. We're gonna touch on that again. One area I do want to talk to you about is that ransomware and ransomware as a service has really exploded in the last couple of years, right? And it's essentially become extortion because it's not even the ransomware anymore. Because don't pay the ransom, we'll expose you because we also espionage, we exfiltrated your data, right?
Right.
Where's this going? Where do you think it's going to end? Like, what's next?
I think it's going to get worse. So you're thinking about exfiltrating data, bad actor compromising a server, maybe pulling off some database data. I think it's going to go towards now infrastructure because of cloud. So imagine being able to snapshot volumes of RDS, in AWS, which is database, snapshotting images of the machines, and you exfiltrate that data, which we've done in penetration testing engagements. The EDR doesn't see you. You basically you're stealing infrastructure. And right now, the bad actors are not de-incentivized. This ecosystem of ransomware has evolved where even when companies are doing reasonable backups, so they're able to restore after an incident, even because now that you mentioned, even now, bad actors are exfiltrating the data. Unless you pay up, you're going to end up, having your data exposed. So the good news is you heard about the Colonial Pipeline incident. That's not the good news. The good news is because of the severity of what's happened in that particular incident, we see a lot of these criminal forums where they sell ransomware. They sell ransomware as a service. They're basically backing out. They basically have made an announcement. They're not going to have anything to do with ransomware because I think they know they've really set off a chain reaction where they're going to bring a lot of federal law enforcement down on them. So that's the good thing.
Well, yeah, and we'll see how that is going to develop. I think that one thing to realize is that people are starting to wake up to there's a balance, right? Like as we add features and capabilities and integrations, and we're all consuming the benefits from this. Well, maybe there's a cost associated with that, right? A cost in terms of a cybersecurity risk. So maybe this will be the turning point there. So
there's also insurance. So one of the key things, obviously, companies need to do is insure against this risk. And I don't know if the insurance company allows you to pay the ransom. As a business owner, FBI says don't pay, right? I get that. You don't want to compensate the criminals. But at the same time, I'm a business owner. I need to get back up in operation or I'm going to be put out of business. So unfortunately, those people are going to pay up.
Yeah, that's right. Because, no gas at the pump is not great for society. So look, one thing that I think we're all starting to realize is that a skilled and persistent adversary will almost always be able to gain access to the network. However, cloud adoption, virtualization, what have you, have complicated the landscape both for the defender but also for the attacker. I know you've got another demo for us queued up on how a bad actor can actually still exfiltrate infrastructure while at the same time evading sort of endpoint security, right? And I'd like to see that because endpoint security, right? We've driven a lot of our defenses to those endpoints, and they've gotten really, really crafty at catching the bad guys there. So go ahead and let's watch that one.